Every conflict has a few epic battles that resonate throughout history, and the Korean War was no exception. When Communist North Korea invaded democratic South Korea on June 25, 1950, the event did not have the same impact as when Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, or the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. The war on the Korean Peninsula was not even major news headlines throughout most of the three-year conflict, but certain events did become ingrained into the public imagination. What was the Chosin Reservoir? Why was this place so important to both Allied and Communist forces? What made this particular battle so difficult for both opposing forces? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Korea had been a Japanese colonial possession since 1910, and after World War II, the Soviet Communists under Joseph Stalin administered the north of the country, and the Americans supported the south, with the border being the 38th parallel. North Korean Communist leader Kim Il-sung decided the time was right after many delays imposed by Stalin, who did not want to start a major war with the United States or the United Nations directly, and he would not send combat troops. But he would support Korean unification under communism when the time was right, and he sent military advisors. Mao Zedong in Communist China agreed to support Kim Il-sung and his Korean People's Army, or KPA, with reinforcements should they be needed, and was also enthusiastic about the prospect. But like Stalin, he was also cautious. Timing was everything, but military arms and supplies filtered into North Korea as they staged men and materiel for the coming invasion. After the Communist invasion of South Korea's army, which had no tanks or heavy weapons, was reduced from 95,000 men to only 22,000 men in the first 5 days of the war. And the United Nations issued a proclamation for an allied coalition of nations to support the South Korean government under Syngman Rhee and the U.S. Army units already positioned there and under threat as a countermeasure. With the collapse of the South Korean forces, the U.S. Army was outnumbered and retreated into a small defensive position called the Pusan Perimeter. 21 nations contributed to the UN force in varying capacities, and actions were taken to relieve the American force and support the South Korean government. But it was the United States that provided 90% of the military force, hence the overall command of the UN coalition falling to World War II General of the Army Douglas MacArthur, who planned and executed the amphibious landing at Incheon in September, placing U.S. Marines and soldiers behind North Korean forces. Cut off from their supply lines and being pushed from both the north and south, the Koreans were losing, as the South Korean capital of Seoul was lost and recaptured 4 times, finally being liberated on September 25th. On September 27th, MacArthur received the top-secret National Security Council Memorandum 8/1 from President Harry S. Truman, reminding him that operations north of the 38th parallel were authorized only if, at the time of such operation, there was no entry into North Korea by major Soviet or Chinese Communist forces, no announcement of intended entry, nor a threat to counter our operations militarily. Likewise, the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent MacArthur a comprehensive directive to govern his future actions on September 27th, which stated that the primary objective was destroying the KPA, with a secondary objective of unification of the Korean Peninsula under Rhee, if possible. The directive was also dependent upon whether or not the Chinese and Soviets became directly involved. Finally, the supplemental UN forces arrived in October, and the remaining North Koreans fled across the 38th parallel, the border between the two countries. UN forces pursued them and continued to push them all the way to the Yalu River, which was the natural border with China. Their front had been stabilized. The premier of the People's Republic of China, Zhou Enlai, and Mao both took decisive action. On October 19, 1950, the Chinese secretly crossed the Yalu River with the 13th Army Group and launched the first phase of their operation, attacking the advancing UN forces near the Sino-Korean border on October 25th. This military decision, made solely by China, forced Stalin to provide air support 12 days later and send more military aid to China. On November 27th, the People's Volunteer Army's 9th Army Group initiated the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. Their plan was to encircle the UN troops and destroy them in place. The surprise attack across the 38th parallel by 30 Chinese divisions, roughly 300,000 soldiers, was a shock to the Allied command, especially as MacArthur had assured Truman that the Chinese would never get involved without air support. This overwhelming Chinese force was divided, and the UN forces under the field command of Major General Oliver P. Smith were encircled and attacked directly by about 120,000 Chinese troops commanded by Zhang Shilun. Closing in on the Allies, Shilun had been ordered by Mao Zedong to destroy the UN forces, and one of the first Chinese units to reach the Chosin Reservoir area was the PVA's 42nd Corps. This force was met primarily by U.S. Army soldiers, the U.S. Marine 1st Division, and Great Britain's Royal Marines of Commando 41. Allied leaders knew the remaining Chinese forces were trying to outflank their forces in a double envelopment, or a pincer movement. The tactical withdrawal was ordered. With the U.S. 1st Marine Division landing at Wonsan 10 Corps, engaged the defending against the PVA 124th Division on November 2nd, they inflicted heavy casualties among the Chinese. The Chinese 9th Army was crossed into North Korea on November 10th and was not noticed by Allied intelligence until it entered the Chosin Reservoir on November 17th. Meanwhile, the 20th Corps of the 9th Army, which had 8 divisions, relieved the 42nd Corps near Udemy, which had been almost completely destroyed. On November 27th, the PVA 20th and 27th Corps established ambushes along the road between Chosin Reservoir and Kotori. They also attacked the 5th, 7th, and 11th Marines, who were surrounded by the PVA 79th and 89th Divisions, with the 59th Division attacking the road between Udamni and Hugaruri to cut off their retreat route and communications. The night of the 27th saw savage close-quarters combat as Chinese forces attacked during the night. The 5th and 7th Marines held the line, inflicting heavy casualties on the Chinese. Due to the situation, MacArthur ordered Major General Almond to withdraw 10 Corps to the port of Hungnam. Faced with tough fighting between the blocking Chinese divisions and the withdrawing Marines, Smith remarked, "Retreat hell, we're not retreating, we're just advancing in a different direction." Major General Oliver P. Smith, commander of the U.S. 1st Marine Division, ordered the 5th Marines to attack west toward Mupyeong-ni, but they were stalled by the PVA 89th Division. The 5th Marines had to dig in on the ridges surrounding Unamni and hold until supported. The United Nations 10 Corps commander, Major General Edward Almond, created an extraction plan. The U.S. Army 7th Infantry Division would provide a regimental combat team to protect the right flank at Singhung-ni. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division would protect the left flank, while providing rear area security, which stretched 10 Corps along a 400-mile front. American airstrikes and artillery, as well as the severe cold reaching as low as 40 degrees, severely damaged the Chinese forces, even more so than the Allied coalition. In order for 10 Corps to retreat from northeast Korea, the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines had to first attack south and capture hills 1542 and 1419 in order to cover the road from Chinese attacks. And they had support from the 1st Marine Air Wing and Naval Carrier Aviation assets. On November 29th, Major General Smith ordered Colonel Lewis B. Chesty Puller's 1st Marine Regiment at Kotori to reopen the road from there to Hagaruri through the area known as Hellfire Valley. Puller responded by sending a special task force consisting of 900 men with 140 vehicles, led by Lieutenant Colonel Douglas B. Drysdale's 41 Independent Commando from the Royal Marines Battalion as the reconnaissance unit, along with the Americans of G Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, and B Company of the U.S. Army's 31st Infantry Regiment, along with rear echelon troops. Despite many human wave attacks and ambushes, the task force, supported by tanks, managed to secure their objective and open the corridor. 401 Commando, numbering about 240 men, accomplished the near impossible. When an ammunition truck was hit by a mortar, it blocked the narrow road, and then the Chinese attacked in force. Drysdale's Royal Marines engaged in brutal fighting. It became hand-to-hand. The Chinese bodies piled up as they fought to reconnect with the Americans of Company B, and the Royal Marines fought through, impressing Puller. When Major General Smith radioed Puller for a situation report, Puller replied, "We've been looking for the enemy for some time now. We finally found him. We're surrounded. That simplifies things." Puller's force was successful. By December 1, 1950, they were in the process of the full retreat when the PVA 79th Division attacked on Udemy and the 89th Division hit Kotori, and these night attacks required air support from night fighter bombers to hold the Marines' perimeter. On the morning of 2nd of December, a joint attack by Fox Company and 1st Battalion 7th Marines secured the Taktong Pass after hard close combat fighting, and this opened the road between Udemy and Haigeruru. This allowed a breakout from the encirclement by the Chinese, and they executed a successful tactical withdrawal. The breakout began in force on December 6, with the 7th Marines as the point force of the retreating column, with the 5th Marines covering the rear as security, as this was where the 7th Marines and Army's Regimental Combat Team 31 found the Chinese defenders at Fujilin Pass, all frozen in place. It became known as the Frozen Army. The last major Chinese action was an ambush at Sudong when the 89th Division unsuccessfully tried to rout Task Force Dog of the 3rd Infantry Division. As a result of these delaying actions, 10 Corps managed to establish a defensive perimeter at the port city of Hungnam on December 11th. Consolidating their position, they were able to evacuate on December 24th to reinforce the badly depleted U.S. 8th Army to the south. About 105,000 soldiers, 98,000 civilians, 17,500 vehicles, and 350,000 tons of supplies and ammunition were shipped from Hungnam to Pusan. Allied battle casualties during the Battle at Chosin totaled around 10,495, which included 4,385 U.S. Marines, 3,163 U.S. Army soldiers, 2,812 South Koreans attached to American units, and 78 British Royal Marines. The 1st Marine Division also reported 7,338 non-battle casualties due to the cold weather, adding up to a total of 17,833 casualties. After the armistice in 1953, from July to November 1954, under Operation Glory, the remains of 4,167 U.S. personnel were exchanged for 13,528 North Korean and Chinese dead. The People's Liberation Army General Logistics Department published its report on that conflict in 1988, stating that the PVA 9th Army suffered 21,366 combat casualties, including 7,304 killed, 30,732 non-combat casualties attributed to the cold weather and lack of food and proper clothing. Total casualties were said to be 52,098, more than 1/3 of its total strength during the attack, but other estimates placed that number at well over 60,000. The Battle at the Chosin Reservoir is often considered the most brutal engagement in modern warfare due to the violence, casualty rate, weather conditions, and the endurance exhibited by both sides. Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please click like, subscribe, and share. Send us comments and show ideas, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.